May 8, 1945, Europe. Germany unconditionally surrendered, marking the end of World War II in Europe. By this date, approximately 10 million German soldiers had been captured or killed, along with countless civilians. Yet amidst vast destruction, thousands of unexpected romances emerged. German women living in devastated cities with nothing to eat met American soldiers of the occupying forces. The decision to marry a former enemy defied expectations of both countries. Between 1945 and 1949, over 20,000 German women married American servicemen and emigrated to the United States. These unions faced intense scrutiny from military authorities, American communities, and German families. This is the story of those who chose love over nation. December 1945, Berlin, American sector. The war had ended 7 months earlier, but hunger had not. In bombed-out Berlin, civilians queued for hours in freezing temperatures for half a loaf of bread. Many left empty-handed. The official ration was 1,200 calories per day, barely enough to survive. 20-year-old Liane Hoffmann and her younger brother Manfred lived with their mother in a damaged apartment building. Their father had not returned from the war. Liane and Manfred grew up during Hitler's rise to power and survived multiple bombings. When Soviet forces encircled Berlin in April 1945, Liane made her way to a Russian prisoner of war camp to claim her brother. He never spoke about his experiences there. By December, the family focused only on survival. Manfred, trained as a chef, found work preparing vegetables for American troops at the United Services Organization's Stork Club. The job meant access to food, scraps, leftovers, anything that could be brought home. The contrast between American abundance and German shortage was impossible to ignore. American soldiers ate meat, white bread, and fresh fruit daily. A single American mess hall discarded more food each day than a German family could obtain in a month. Military records show the average American GI consumed 3,400 calories daily, nearly 3 times the German civilian ration. According to occupation authorities, this disparity was intentional. Joint Chiefs of Staff Directive 10067, issued in May 1945, prohibited American soldiers from fraternizing with German civilians. General Dwight Eisenhower enforced strict non-fraternization rules, warning that soldiers caught associating with Germans would face court-martial. But hunger creates opportunity, and opportunity creates contact. And contact sometimes creates something neither government anticipated. Christmas season, 1945. USO Stork Club, Berlin. Through his work, Manfred obtained 2 precious passes to an American Army dance band's Christmas performance. Their mother insisted Liane take her friend Mayana. "If there is extra food," she said, "bring it home." Liane and Mayana sat on the balcony. Below, an American Army dance band played Boogie Woogie. Energetic, optimistic, distinctly American. At the other end sat young American soldiers. Liane noticed one in particular, fair-haired, with a kind face. She shouted to Mayana in German, "That one looks like a sweet guy." The soldier turned and smiled. In fluent German, he replied he might melt. Liane was mortified. The soldier was 19-year-old George Wagner from Round Top, Texas, inducted after high school graduation. His German immigrant parents farmed 312 acres in Fayette County. George grew up speaking German at home. He arrived in Germany in December 1945, assigned to the 279th Station Hospital in Berlin. By the end of 1945, approximately 1.5 million American troops occupied Germany. Most were young men who had never traveled outside the United States. The non-fraternization policy was failing. Military police reports document hundreds of daily violations. On December 26, 1945, General Eisenhower officially relaxed the policy, permitting limited conversation with civilians. George Wagner became a frequent visitor at the Hoffmann apartment. The family liked the young American. He complimented Mrs. Hoffmann's fried potatoes, and she darned his socks. He brought soap, sugar, coffee, items unavailable to Germans. George especially enjoyed chatting with blonde-haired Liane. She had a German boyfriend and didn't think much about George's visits. But George was thinking seriously about her. Spring 1946, Berlin and Round Top, Texas. In April 1946, General Joseph McNarney issued a directive allowing American soldiers to marry German nationals, subject to strict conditions. The commanding officer had to approve. The bride underwent background investigation for Nazi Party affiliation. Medical examinations were mandatory. The process took 6 to 9 months. Between January and June 1946, American soldiers filed over 10,000 marriage applications. The surge overwhelmed military chaplains and administration. George Wagner made his choice. In June 1946, he asked Liane to wait. He would return to Texas, be discharged, then bring her to America if she agreed. Liane was torn. She had known George 6 months. She had never seen Texas. She spoke almost no English. Her mother would be alone. But the alternative was remaining in devastated Berlin with no food, no prospects, no future. Germany offered nothing to young women like Liane. The economy had collapsed. Cities lay in rubble. 7 million German men had died, creating severe shortage of partners. When George returned to Round Top in October 1946, his parents noticed their son appeared troubled. One day, Walter Wagner found George staring at his reflection in the water trough. "What is wrong?" Walter asked in German. "I am in love," George replied. Walter understood. "Do you want to bring her here?" he asked. "Yes," George answered. "I want to marry her, but I don't know if she will come." The Wagner family began bureaucratic proceedings. On January 14, 1947, Fayette County Veterans Service officer Oscar Graeber wrote to Immigration and Naturalization Service explaining George Wagner had entered agreement with Liane Hoffmann of Berlin. The response required proof the woman would not burden the United States. On February 28, Round Top State Bank affirmed the Wagner family's ability to support the young Fräulein. Walter Wagner provided detailed inventory of assets, including his 312 acres. In Berlin, Liane received Walter Wagner's formal German letter inviting her to Texas. He didn't mention marriage directly, but Liane understood. George wrote too, though in English. She kept a dictionary to translate. "I think my reason for coming was strictly family," Liane later recalled. "I thought once I got here I could bring my family. We had nothing to eat in Germany, absolutely nothing. We would stand in line for bread, and by the time we'd get to the front, it would be gone. It was still very, very bad in Germany." In 1947, Liane Hoffmann made her decision. She would go to Texas, June 1947. American Overseas Airlines flight, New York to Dallas. Liane Hoffmann was the first single German woman to travel alone to Texas to marry her beau, and only the second in the entire United States. Most German war brides either married in Germany and arrived with husbands or waited months for paperwork. The War Brides Act created a revolutionary immigration pathway. Before this legislation, strict quotas limited German immigration to approximately 26,000 annually. The national origins quota system discriminated against Southern and Eastern Europeans and excluded Asians. The War Brides Act changed everything, allowing foreign-born spouses to enter as non-quota immigrants. Between 1945 and 1950, approximately 300,000 foreign women immigrated under this legislation. Approximately 70,000 were British. Another 50,000 came from continental Europe. Between 14,000 and 20,000 were German. Approximately 50,000 were Japanese. The journey varied. British war brides traveled on bride ships, converted troop transports taking 14 days through terrible storms. German war brides faced additional scrutiny with rigorous background checks for Nazi affiliation. Medical examinations screened for tuberculosis and venereal disease. Liane flew American Overseas Airlines via New York to Dallas. When her flight arrived at Love Field at midnight on June 15th, George wasn't there. An earlier telegram had been delivered to the wrong sheriff's office. George was still at the Wagner farm harvesting hay. A deputy, finally, delivered the correct telegram. George immediately sent response and caught a northbound train. Meanwhile, reporters and photographers anxiously waited to interview the young German woman. Liane spoke almost no English and was terrified. Tarrant County Sheriff's Deputy Harry Goldberg stepped forward and offered assistance. Since George hadn't arrived, Goldberg asked if he could show Liane around Dallas. There were so many lights, Liane remembered. In Germany, even 2 years after the war, it was still so dark at night. Then I saw the flying red horse on a big building, the Mobil Oil Company symbol. The deputy stopped where a vendor sold bananas. Goldberg bought Liane an entire stem. She hadn't seen fresh fruit in years. The next day's newspapers published the story. Anxious Dallas relatives inundated Liane with questions about Germans in Berlin. She couldn't help them. When George finally arrived, they were photographed together. They spent one night in a Dallas hotel, in separate rooms, then caught a train south to Fayette County. June 1947, Round Top, Fayette County, Texas. George and Liane got off the train at West Point. The filling station was open at midnight. Some men were drinking beer. George's cousin Arlen agreed to drive them home. The car made its way down a bumpy country road in complete darkness. Tall vegetation crowded both ditches. I thought to myself, pretty soon there would be a sign saying, "This is the end of the world," Liane recalled. At night, everything looked so bad. When they reached the Wagner property, dogs ran out barking. The farmhouse was dark except one lamp. Liane had found new hosiery in Dallas to look presentable. She now realized the effort was unnecessary. Nothing was fancy about the Wagner home. When George introduced her, Liane stepped forward to hug his mother, but Mrs. Wagner put her hands up. It wasn't customary to embrace strangers. She was kind but reserved, very reserved, especially compared to me, Liane said. Every time she went to Lagrange, she would buy a little orange and put it on the table in my room. Liane was shown to a small, narrow bed in a space the size of a bathroom. Despite growing misgivings, she was exhausted and slept soundly. In the morning, she saw crepe myrtles in full bloom and a large peach tree covered with ripe fruit. I thought, well, it's not that bad after all. That good feeling stayed with me until I saw the white enamel water bucket on the kitchen table. Everyone drank from the same dipper. That was awful. The first thing I added was a pitcher. Another shock awaited. Her first night, Liane needed facilities and was directed to the outhouse 50 yards from the house. Nothing had prepared her for using outdoor facilities in the dark, then finding her way back with dogs sniffing her. The contrast between expectation and reality was profound. Liane had imagined America with modern conveniences. Rural Texas in 1947 had no indoor plumbing, no running water, no electricity. The family drew water from a well. They used kerosene lamps. The kitchen stove burned wood. Similar shocks awaited thousands of other German war brides. A Munich woman discovered her new home was a one-room cabin with dirt floor. A Berlin woman whose husband described his estate found herself in a coal mining town. American Red Cross records document dozens of German women requesting immediate return passage. Some marriages ended within weeks, but Liane decided to stay. 2 weeks after arrival, George announced they needed a marriage license. My mother-in-law couldn't stand having an unmarried young woman under her roof, Liane explained. I never remember George formally asking me to marry him. It was just assumed. On July 17, 1947, they married at Bethlehem Lutheran Church in Round Top. No wedding pictures were taken. The community organized a reception. Relatives filled the yard. 2 decorated chairs sat on the porch for George and Liane. When Liane realized she was the main attraction, she jumped out of the car and ran into the bushes. Everyone was so nice to me, and they all spoke German. I think there were 105 people there that night. Autumn, 1947 through the 1950s, Round Top and Lagrange, Texas. Liane resigned herself to pulling a cotton sack through fields. Though she didn't relish manual labor, she realized farm women worked from early morning to late night in house, garden, barn, and fields. I found my mother-in-law trying to wipe the price off a can of asparagus, Liane recalled. She liked asparagus but wanted no one to see how much it cost. I could not believe she didn't feel entitled to that small treat. Harsh reality sent many German war brides home as fast as they could travel. But Liane had no money for return passage. She was trapped by circumstances and her decision. Yet she also loved George Wagner. He was a good man, and he loved me. What more could I have asked for? German war brides faced unique challenges. Germany had been the enemy. Nazi Germany started the war that killed 400,000 American servicemen. American families sometimes expressed open hostility. A German war bride in Wisconsin recalled neighbors refusing to speak to her. Another in Ohio found a swastika painted on her door. Academic studies revealed German war brides employed several strategies. Some identified themselves by German regions, Bavarian, Prussian, Rhinelander. Others emphasized they had opposed Hitler. Still others remained silent, speaking English without accent. Liane refused to hide German heritage but refused to discuss the war. She learned English quickly. She insisted on being called Leona, Americanizing her name. In 1948, Liane and George's daughter Georgia was born. Diane arrived in 1954. Liane found motherhood fulfilling yet isolating. She had no female relatives nearby. Her mother remained in Berlin. Letters took weeks. During early marriage years, Liane encouraged George to take a Houston job, but George was miserable in the city. The couple compromised. George became manager of Gulf Oil Service Station in Lagrange, and the family moved to town. He later worked for Brasher Motor Company. Meanwhile, Liane taught herself typing on an old Green Army typewriter and found work at Fayette County Abstract Company. You had to have something going on up here for that work, she said, tapping her head. But you didn't need to know anything to get your sack in the morning and pick cotton all day. I wasn't brought up to that. George and Liane eventually opened Lagrange Cleaners. When Liane sent photographs to Germany showing herself helping dress a hog, her mother was horrified. But Liane took life in stride. She adapted, she survived, she thrived. The 1950s across the United States. By 1950, over 20,000 German war brides had immigrated to the United States. settling in every state. Experiences varied dramatically based on economic status, community attitude, presence of German speakers, and personal adaptability. Some arrived to welcoming communities and comfortable conditions. But most, like Liane Wagner, married working-class soldiers and settled in rural or small-town America. They discovered lives of hard labor, social isolation, and economic struggle. Statistical analysis revealed patterns. German war brides with education, language skills, or professional training adapted more successfully. Women in German immigrant communities faced less discrimination. Brides whose husbands spoke German reported greater marital satisfaction. Age at immigration mattered significantly. Women in their early 20s adapted better than older women. Liane Hoffmann was 20 years old when she arrived, giving her advantages others lacked. The impossible statistics became clear by mid-1950s. Approximately 300,000 foreign women had married American servicemen during and after World War II. Congress created unprecedented immigration legislation. The military organized massive transportation operations. The American Red Cross established adaptation programs. This represented the largest organized international migration of women in human history. Never before had so many women from so many nations traveled so far to join husbands they barely knew. From logistical perspective, the numbers were staggering. Operation War Bride involved dozens of ships making hundreds of voyages. The Queen Mary alone carried more than 20,000 war brides between 1946 and 1948. The American government spent millions on transportation, processing, and support services. Most stayed. Divorce rates among war bride couples were lower than among American couples generally. One study found fewer than 10% ended in divorce during the first decade, remarkably low. Considering circumstances, Liane Wagner never regretted her decision despite hardships. "If I didn't like it here, I would have gone home," she said decades later. "But I never wanted to leave. This became my home." The 1960s through 1980s, LaGrange, Texas, and across America. Georgia Wagner, born in 1948, grew up as an American child with a German mother. She spoke English at school and German at home. Thousands of children grew up similarly. They were sons and daughters of German war brides. Some experienced bullying because of mother's German origins, especially during Cold War. Others struggled with dual identity. Many reported mothers rarely spoke about the war, leaving children curious but uninformed. But children also benefited. They grew up bilingual, bicultural, with broader perspectives. They understood nationality was complex, enemies could become friends, and love could transcend borders. Liane Wagner became a United States citizen in the early 1950s. She raised her flag on holidays, she voted in elections, she served on community boards, she became legally and practically an American, but she never stopped being German. She corresponded with family in Germany throughout life. She cooked German food, she sang German songs, she maintained identity while adopting new one. This pattern repeated across thousands of German war bride families. Women became Americans without ceasing to be Germans. They adapted without abandoning. By the 1970s and 80s, scholars studying war bride phenomenon discovered something unexpected. German war brides, despite facing greater discrimination than British or French war brides, reported equal or higher satisfaction with immigration decision. The hardship they endured seemed to strengthen determination to succeed. Research by Elfriede Berthiaume-Schuckert and Barbara Smith-Schibetta analyzed responses from over 2,000 war brides during late 1980s. German war brides particularly valued economic opportunities America offered. Many pursued careers, achieving economic independence their German mothers never could. They worked as teachers, nurses, administrators, business owners, professionals. Liane returned to visit Berlin several times during 1960s and 70s. She found the city transformed, modern and prosperous. But she also found society more rigid, more formal, more constrained. "I'm glad I came here," she told her mother. "America gave me opportunities I never would have had in Germany." The 1980s, across the United States. 4 decades after World War II ended, historians and researchers began systematically studying the war bride phenomenon. What had been private family stories became subjects of academic inquiry. Schuckert and Schibetta's groundbreaking book brought war brides' voices to public attention for the first time. The authors, themselves daughters of war brides, recognized historical significance. Their research revealed scope: 300,000 women from dozens of countries representing largest organized female migration in history. Local newspapers began publishing features about war brides. Television documentaries explored their experiences. Museums created exhibits. Women who had spent decades simply living as Americans discovered their stories mattered. Liane Wagner was interviewed by local historians during the 1980s. Her story appeared in Fayette County Record. Interviews revealed patterns researchers had not anticipated. Many German war brides expressed no nostalgia for Germany despite missing families. They did not romanticize homeland. Germany represented hunger, destruction, loss. America represented opportunity, abundance, hope. One striking statistic emerged. 68% of British war brides reported feeling both British and American. But German war brides showed different pattern. Over 75% identified primarily as American with no hyphenated identity. They had transformed themselves, shedding German identity and embracing American identity more completely than war brides from allied nations. This difference reflected unique position. British, French, and Italian war brides came from allied nations compatible with American identity. But German war brides came from enemy nation. Their national identity created cognitive dissonance. Resolution required choosing one over the other. Most chose America. Psychological literature explored this phenomenon. German war brides employed identity transformation rather than identity addition. They didn't become German-American. They became American, period. Transformation was both defensive, protecting against discrimination, and strategic, facilitating integration. But transformation came at cost. Many reported feeling emotionally distant from past. They couldn't explain to American families what life had been like in Germany. After a few years, they stopped trying. Liane Wagner rarely spoke about childhood in Berlin or war experiences. Her daughters knew only fragments. The past remained locked away, too painful to share. This silence was common. Fewer than 20% regularly discussed German past with American-born children. The 1990s through 2010s. Academic conferences, historical societies, research archives. As the 20th century ended, historians recognized war bride phenomenon as significant yet understudied aspect of World War II's aftermath. Major research institutions launched oral history projects to document experiences before the generation passed away. These projects revealed information transforming scholarly understanding of post-war immigration, gender relations, and cultural integration. War brides had actively shaped American society, introducing European foods, customs, and perspectives. They expanded Americans' understanding of foreign cultures. They demonstrated former enemies could become fellow citizens. Montana Historical Society conducted extensive interviews with war brides in early 2000s. Interviews revealed that despite vastly different cultures, women shared common experiences: culture shock upon arrival, difficulty learning English, homesickness, eventual adaptation, ultimate satisfaction. Academic studies examined long-term outcomes. Researchers tracked divorce rates, finding them surprisingly low. They studied economic achievement, finding war bride families generally achieved middle-class status within one generation. They analyzed children, finding high rates of educational achievement, linguistic ability, career success. One particularly striking finding emerged from German war bride studies. Women who married American soldiers from German immigrant families, like Liane and George Wagner, reported significantly higher marital satisfaction than women who married soldiers from non-German backgrounds. Shared language and cultural understanding made adjustment easier. Fayette County, Texas, with large German immigrant population, proved ideal for German war brides. The community spoke German, celebrated German traditions, welcomed newcomers as fellow Germans. By the 2000s, most German war brides were in their 70s, 80s, or older. Some had passed away. Researchers raced to document stories before it was too late. Liane Wagner, interviewed in her 80s, reflected on life with satisfaction. She had survived World War II. She escaped starvation. She crossed the Atlantic alone. She adapted to rural Texas. She learned English. She raised 2 daughters. She built a business. She lived in America over 60 years. "I loved my husband," she said simply. "George Wagner was a good man, and he loved me. What more could I have asked for?" This sentiment appeared repeatedly in war bride interviews. Despite hardship, most expressed no regret. They had made the right choice. They found good lives in America. They were grateful. Historical reckoning revealed profound truth. War brides were pioneers. They ventured into unknown territory, crossed cultural boundaries, created new identities. They demonstrated extraordinary courage, resilience, adaptability. They deserved recognition not just as wives who followed husbands, but as immigrants who transformed themselves and enriched their adopted nation. 2010 through 2020, the twilight years. George Wagner passed away in the late 1990s after more than 50 years of marriage. Liane mourned deeply but continued active life in La Grange. She remained involved in church, maintained friendships, spent time with daughters and grandchildren, participated in community activities. She also became more willing to discuss her past. Perhaps George's death freed her. Perhaps advancing age made her less concerned about judgments. Perhaps she recognized history was important and her story mattered. Researchers interviewing Liane in her 80s found a woman remarkably sharp, articulate, opinionated. She spoke perfect English with slight accent. She spoke fluent German with Texas idioms. She had become something unique, a German Texan, combining identities once thought incompatible. Across America, remaining German war brides entered final years. Most were widows. Their American husbands had passed away. They lived alone or with family. But they remained resilient. One German war bride in Wisconsin, aged 92, still drove and lived independently. Another in California, 95, volunteered at hospital. A third in Pennsylvania, 97, published her memoir. These women witnessed extraordinary history. Born in 1920s, they came of age during Hitler's rise, survived World War II, immigrated during Cold War, raised families during 50s and 60s prosperity, lived into 21st century. They spanned nearly a century of dramatic change. Digital archives made stories accessible. Library of Congress Veterans History Project included dozens of war bride interviews. YouTube hosted videos. Historical societies created online exhibits. Descendants uploaded photographs to genealogy websites. The technology would have seemed miraculous to young women crossing Atlantic in bride ships during 1946. They wrote letters taking weeks to arrive. They had no way to contact families quickly. They were truly alone in foreign land. Modern technology transformed isolation. War brides could video chat with German relatives instantaneously, but most didn't take advantage. They had made choice decades earlier. They had become American. Germany was past. America was present and future. Liane Wagner, like most German war brides, focused on American family. Her daughters, grandchildren, great-grandchildren were American. Her life was American. Her identity was American. Germany was where she came from, but Texas was home. Final generation of World War II German war brides carried extraordinary historical experience. They lived through events future generations would study. They made choices altering their lives completely. They demonstrated people could overcome obstacles, cross cultural divides, build successful lives in foreign lands. Their legacy extended beyond personal experiences. They raised bicultural children. They introduced German traditions into American communities. They maintained connections between America and Germany during Cold War. They proved personal connections could transcend national conflicts. As the generation passed away, they left behind documented history of courage, resilience, transformation. Future researchers would study their experiences. Future immigrants would find inspiration. Future generations would remember that love, hope, determination could overcome war, distance, cultural difference. 2015 through today. Historical assessment. The War Brides Act fundamentally changed American immigration policy. Before this legislation, immigration was controlled by national origins quotas discriminating against Southern and Eastern Europeans, excluding Asians almost entirely. The War Brides Act created the first large-scale non-quota immigration pathway. It demonstrated immigrants from Asia, Southern Europe, and other non-preferred regions could successfully integrate. Japanese, Korean, and Filipino war brides proved race didn't determine assimilation potential. This precedent influenced subsequent reform. The Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952 eliminated racial barriers to citizenship, though maintained national origins quotas. The Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 finally abolished quota system entirely, opening immigration equally. War brides played indirect but significant role. Their successful integration demonstrated diverse immigrants could become productive citizens. They challenged racial and ethnic prejudices simply by living normal lives. German war brides specifically contributed to changing American attitudes toward Germans. In 1945, Germany was hated enemy. By 1955, West Germany was essential Cold War ally. This shift resulted from many factors, but personal connections mattered. Americans with German daughters-in-law, neighbors, or co-workers found it harder to maintain stereotypical views. Liane Wagner's story exemplified transformation. She arrived as representative of defeated enemy Germany. Within a decade, she was Mrs. Wagner, respected community member, American citizen, business owner, mother of American children. Statistical analysis revealed remarkable patterns. Second-generation children of war brides achieved higher average educational levels than general population. They were more likely to attend college, speak multiple languages, pursue international careers. Bicultural background provided advantages. Economic studies showed similar patterns. War bride families generally achieved middle-class or upper-middle-class status within one generation. Foreign-born mothers often pushed children toward education and professional careers, valuing opportunities they had been denied. Community studies revealed war brides enriched American culture. They introduced European cooking techniques, child-rearing practices, holiday traditions, cultural perspectives into previously homogeneous communities. Small-town America became slightly less isolated, slightly more cosmopolitan. The German war bride phenomenon also affected Germany. Letters and packages from war brides brought news of American prosperity to struggling German families. These connections helped rebuild German-American relations at grassroots level. Some German war brides sponsored family members to immigrate. Liane Wagner helped brother Manfred immigrate in 1950s. He settled in Texas, built successful career as chef, raised American family. By 21st century, descendants numbered hundreds of thousands, possibly millions. These Americans carried within them legacy of their grandmother's courage. They understood their existence resulted from extraordinary choices made under extraordinary circumstances. The broader impact extended beyond numbers. These women demonstrated fundamental truths. People can adapt to dramatic change. Love transcends national boundaries. Former enemies can become family. Courage sometimes means abandoning everything familiar to pursue uncertain future. Liane Hoffmann Wagner lived to be 98 years old. She passed away in 2023, having spent 76 years in Texas, far more in America than Germany. She lived to see daughters become grandmothers, grandchildren become parents, great-grandchildren grow into next generation. Her obituary in Fayette County Record noted she was a German war bride who came to Texas in 1947. The notice was brief, factual, understated, much like Liane herself. It didn't capture extraordinary courage required to cross an ocean alone at age 20. It didn't describe hardships adapting to rural Texas. It didn't convey resilience enabling her to build successful American life despite facing discrimination, isolation, culture shock, but her family knew. Her daughters remembered their mother's strength, independence, determination never to be defeated. Her grandchildren inherited resilience. Her great-grandchildren carried German-American heritage into 21st century living legacy of her choice. Across America, similar stories unfolded thousands of times. German war brides who arrived between 1945 and 1952 lived long lives, raised families, became integral parts of communities. Most died as Americans, not Germans. Having completed transformation they began when they boarded ships or planes. Historical memory remains incomplete. They don't appear prominently in World War II histories focusing on battles and leaders. They don't feature in immigration histories emphasizing larger migrations. They don't occupy space in women's histories highlighting suffragists and activists. Yet, their story deserves remembering. 20,000 German women made choices changing their lives completely. They demonstrated courage equal to any soldiers. They crossed hostile oceans to uncertain futures. They adapted to foreign cultures without guidance. They raised children who became proud Americans. They contributed through work, service, participation. They proved ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances can achieve remarkable things. The War Brides Act stands as one of most successful immigration programs in American history. 300,000 foreign women came under its provisions. Most stayed, most thrived, most raised successful families. The program cost millions but generated immeasurable returns in human capital, cultural enrichment, international goodwill. German war brides specifically demonstrated former enemies could become fellow citizens. In 1945, this seemed impossible. Germany had been America's mortal enemy. 6 million Jews murdered in Holocaust. American soldiers died fighting Germans. Hatred was real, justified, deeply felt. Yet within a decade, German war brides were accepted community members. Their success refuted racial theories of German militarism. They proved nationality didn't determine character. Individuals couldn't be blamed for government's crimes. Human connections mattered more than national origins. This lesson remains relevant. In a world divided by nationalism, conflict, mutual suspicion, the war bride story reminds us people can overcome differences. Enemies can become friends. Personal relationships can transcend political boundaries. Liane Wagner's grave in Round Top bears a simple marker with name, birth date, death date. No mention of Germany, no reference to journey across Atlantic, no acknowledgement of courage required. But the woman buried there was extraordinary. She survived World War II, she escaped starvation, she crossed ocean alone at 20, she adapted to completely foreign culture, she learned new language, she built successful business, she raised American children, she lived in Texas 76 years. Her story, and thousands like her, deserve recognition. These women were pioneers who ventured into unknown territory. They were immigrants who enriched American culture. They were mothers who raised American families. They were ordinary people who responded to extraordinary circumstances with courage, determination, resilience. We remember them not with grand monuments, but with quiet respect. We honor them not with formal ceremonies, but with recognition of contributions. We preserve their stories not in marble and bronze, but in words, memories, historical records. 20,000 German war brides who married American soldiers existed. Their stories are real. Their courage was real. Their contributions to America were real. And that reality is far more powerful than any fiction could ever be.